Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of of matriarchs, the women we get to really know in the book of Genesis. So we're going to conclude our study of Leah today. I said a couple of times ago, a couple of sessions ago, that after the birth of Judah, um, Leah had given up hope, and she had in that moment. But I think after the birth of sons number 5 and 6, which we talked about last time, she's hoping again that her husband will value her, and thus the naming of those two children. Just that her husband will be attached to her as a husband is to a wife. That she would mean more to him than Bilhah and Zilpah do. Um, she's not hoping that he'll love her the way he loves Rachel. Rachel dies in childbirth with Benjamin. We'll talk about that later. And so Leah gets to be the sole wife for many years. And there are two moments that tell us something. They're just brief. There are two moments that we want to look at after the Mandrake incident, which kind of makes you feel icky. Um, that are sweet and tell us something about Jacob and Leah's life together after Rachel's passing. So Rachel left behind two sons, Joseph and Benjamin. And and anyway, when Joseph is a boy and starts to have dreams, and dreaming about the stars bowing down to him, and or the sheaves of wheat bowing down to him. And he shares those with his brothers. They despise him even more because he's clearly dad's favorite. And the dreams are so extreme in Joseph being exalted above the whole family that they even upset Jacob. And he related this dream to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream you have had? Shall I and your mother and your brothers actually come to bow ourselves down before you to the ground?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept this saying in mind. What mother is he talking about? Because Rachel is dead. His mother is Leah. Your mother is referring to Leah. And she's the de facto mother of Joseph and Benjamin. We're not told that she mistreated or even um, made Joseph and Benjamin to feel secondary. Um, the way Sarah despised Ishmael. We're not told that at all. And I like to think that she mothered those boys like they were her own. Um, in fact, had she not treated them that way, had she been a little cold, distant, unloving to them, that might have mitigated the brothers' hatred of Joseph a little bit. But if she loved them as her own children, then what the father did would make that even more galling. I think there's a lot of meaning when Jacob says, "Shall I and your mother and your brothers bow down to you in this way," and describe Leah as Joseph's mother. There's one more. So, the one piece of ground that the patriarchs owned, even though they were promised all of Palestine, they owned a field with a cave in it at Machpelah, and they bought that Abraham bought it as a place to bury Sarah, and he was buried there, and Isaac and Rebekah are buried there. Rachel died during the nomadic wanderings of Jacob and his family, and she was not buried there. It's near Hebron. They were in the south, at the very near the Negev desert, and it would have been a few days' journey to bury her there. So she was buried under an oak. And we'll talk about that when we talk about Rachel. Um, However, Leah was buried there. So this is something that Joseph says when he's alone. Both of his wives are gone, and Joseph has provided for the family, and he's bringing everybody to live in Egypt with him, where he's number two in charge of all the nation. And he's made these prophecies about his boys. He's already made Joseph promise to bury him back home and not to let him be buried in Egypt. But he's going to repeat this to all the sons. He charged them and said, I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought along with the field from Ephron the Hittite for a burial site. There they buried Abraham and his wife Sarah. There they buried Isaac and his wife Rebekah. He didn't say dad or mom, did he? And there I buried Leah. In the field and the cave that is in it, purchased from the sons of Heth. And when Jacob finished charging his sons, he drew his feet into bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. The last person he mentioned in life was Leah. And he mentioned that he had taken his wife, whatever the distance was, to that cave to bury her there so that he could be buried alongside her, the way his mom and dad and his grandma and grandpa were laying together in that cave. Uh, um, I just, I feel good for Leah that she's there. That cave is there somewhere near Hebron, and they're there. Their bodies are there, side by side. Um, he, if he hadn't valued her, if he hadn't cared for her, if he hadn't been connected to her, if he hadn't come to love her as his wife, um, but he did, and that's the last thing he says. And there I buried Leah. You put me there. That's where I belong. Next to my wife, with my mom and my dad and my grandma and my grandpa. You have to promise me, all of you, you have to promise me that's what you'll do. And that's what they do. When he dies, all the brothers make a trip and they bury their dad. The same way he and Esau buried Isaac, the same way Isaac and Ishmael buried Abraham. The brothers get together and bury their dad. But the husbands bury the wives. They're in the cave at Machpelah. Okay, well, that's all time we have for Leah. We'll talk about Rachel next time. Heavens, what a force of nature she is. Anyway, we'll talk about her next time. Look forward to that. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.